maybe a related question I could ask?
Sure.
Why do you think we're in the physical? And why do you think we have to? I'm sure there are beings that live in other universes, and perhaps we have ourselves. Why are we in a physical world, and why do so many people identify with being physical and not spiritual?
Because we haven't figured out the physical yet, and before we can before we can go into the divine, you got to figure out the physical. You know, it's like we've only been at this for 18 billion years. I mean, come on, in terms of eternity, that's all 18 billion years is. God wanted to know what was going on in form, so it sent us all down here in terms of thought forms to figure it out. And every single human being is figuring out something different. And when you finally figure it out, I mean, how hard is it to figure out? When individuals finally get their consciousness happening, they turn into masters, and they either live on for a few thousand years, or they dematerialize and go on, and then they can influence our life from other ways. But like, hey, we can easily see that some of us are like maturing and still going on. So it's like, I think it's just a learning experience. Get off your back. Quit trying to take it so personal. You know, have a good time. That's what God told you in Genesis. I made the birds in the air, the fish in the sea, the animals on the land for you to enjoy and have a good time with. Well, follow through on that. Of course, then man says you need to suffer to get to God. I also notice that man tells you to give up all of this stuff so that you can get to God. I also notice that the guy that's telling me to give it all up is the one collecting all the stuff I'm giving up. So, you know.
So you're not a vegetarian. Are you a vegetarian?
Well, not now, no. I am occasionally. I'm nothing. I do what my body wants. I was a vegetarian for 7 years. Off and on, I do vegetarianism. Let me give you my best insight on vegetarianism. God tells you what to do. I noticed that on the North Pole and the South Pole, where it's constantly snowing and there's a, you know, an ultraviolet frequency, I noticed God doesn't have fruit trees, and I noticed it doesn't have vegetables. I noticed it has a lot of meat and a lot of blubber. So I noticed that if you live in an ultraviolet frequency, you need a lot of blubber and a lot of meat to stay alive. Now let's look at the equator. I noticed that the equator, God's got a lot of fruit and nut trees, and it's got a lot of fish, but it doesn't have a lot of blubber, and it doesn't have a lot of meat. So I also noticed that's infrared. I also noticed, like everybody out there, that in the summer you don't eat nowhere near as much meat as you eat in the winter. Well, obviously, God must have a plan. When it's ultraviolet, I notice we eat meat. When it's infrared, I notice we eat vegetables and fruit. And so I think God kind of gave us an insight to work with. The other thing is, go to any health food store and you'll see books that range from eating meat is the right thing all the way to being a microbiotic. And everybody tried it. Everybody had their own experience. Everybody who wrote the book proved it. Who do you believe? So I figure you got 6 billion people on the planet. You got 6 billion different vegetarian habits. Pick what works. I've seen it, like if you don't eat meat, you get very light. I mean, that's just a known fact. But I've also seen a lot of vegetarians in the hospital because of malnutrition. They didn't know how to blend vegetarian food. I've also seen a lot of vegetarians who can't get their feet on the ground because they're so high from eating vegetables, they ain't real. They're like, you know, they can't get their feet on the ground, they can't ground. You tell me this is educating myself? I'm out of control like that? If you listen to your body, it'll tell you what to do. If it tells you to be a vegetarian, you'll do it. If it tells you to be a meat eater, you'll do it. Listen to yourself. You're the greatest teacher on the planet.
The few remaining minutes that we have, I'd like to get into perhaps some methods and tips on how some of our listeners can perhaps speed up their unfoldment of their consciousness and their understandings and application of consciousness. So do you have any methods or...
You bet. One of the biggest things you can learn is don't take it personally, don't take it personally, don't take it personally. Here's one of the things that I found out. As much as we hate to admit this, whatever happens to us, we created it. God doesn't make mistakes out there. Physical reality. For every action, there's a like and equal reaction. When we learn both sides of the coin, we become balanced. We don't have to experience either side. Everything that happens to us, we've created. Instead of complaining, getting neurotic about things that are happening to us, if we were to not blame ourselves, but if we were just to look at ourselves and say, all right, I got this coming, I can work with this. Instead of blaming it, learning it, I've discovered that if we really study it and take a look at it and don't blame it and try to figure it out and get a handle on it, we don't have to repeat it. If we complain about it and I don't know if you're allowed to use the word bitch, but if we bitch about it and we do all of these other things about it, I've noticed that we have to repeat it. Now, the simple truth is, how much garbage do you want to keep repeating? If you really created it, it's easier just to acknowledge that you did and then get on with your life and not judge it. This goes into learning how to be eternal. See, eternity goes on forever. What makes eternity is this split second. Whatever you've done in this split second is what allows your future. Now, in this split second, if I want to complain and I want to gripe and I want to belittle everybody else, do you know what I have coming up in the future? That very picture. But if in this present second I want to learn, I want to grow myself, and I want to understand my totality, that's what I have coming in the future. So this is how you get to pick what you want. I learned not to take it personally. The more you take it personally, the more you repeat the lesson. The less you take it personally, the quicker you learn. Struggle becomes less.